I was the person that you could call, can I get a gun? I need a pistol from you. You know, I come get it. They're giving my firearm back, and they're also handing me some money.
What were they doing?
Just committing robberies. Then I found myself becoming more involved.
So you were taking part in these robberies?
Yeah. You're getting 20, 30,000 in 2 minutes. You think you can do it again. And then you think you can do it again. And then you think you can do it again and get away with it. April 7th, 2006, I received 20 life sentences. The day I got sentenced, my sentence was illegal. My lawyer should have knew that. The judge should have knew that she couldn't impose the sentence that she imposed. The U.S. Attorney's Office should have knew that they should have never charged me with the 3559 statute, the federal 3 strikes law, because my priors didn't qualify before. Everybody's supposed to know this.
This is Carlos McAdory, a former federal inmate sentenced to 18 life sentences for a string of armed robberies he committed in the mid-2000s. Carlos comes from a working-class neighborhood in St. Paul, Minnesota, and was a gangster and a drug dealer from a young age. He caught multiple shooting cases while he was still a teenager. But his life really fell apart when he and his crew started doing violent stick-ups of video poker games throughout the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. Dozens and dozens of them. When the feds finally got involved, Carlos was the only member of his crew to take his case to trial. But of course, his so-called friends ratted on him, and Carlos was sentenced to 18 life terms. Insanity. It took Carlos years of fighting his sentence from inside of prison before he was able to prove that his sentence was in fact illegal. Finally, in 2022, he was resentenced and set free after almost 2 decades behind bars, and is today a completely changed man. Carlos's case exposes the corruption of the justice system top to bottom, from the prosecution to the judges and even his defense lawyers. Carlos explains why it is vital for criminal defendants to be knowledgeable of the law and to fight for themselves. For anyone out there fighting a case or who has a loved one in prison serving an unjust sentence, pay close attention. Carlos' story might help. Ladies and gentlemen, back from the dead, it's Carlos McAdory right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
You grew up in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Grew up in St. Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was life like? Childhood?
Childhood was good, you know. Single, you know, my mother was, you know, it was a single household, myself and my older brother. You know, my brother and I, you know, we were thick as thieves, you know, we were together. It was just myself, him and my mother. Both our fathers, you know, they lived down south in Minneapolis, not Minneapolis, but Mississippi. And so frequently, you know, we would see our fathers, whether it was through the summertime, if our mother sent us down there. But for the most part, it was just myself, my brother, and my mother, you know, and of course, we know there were struggles, you know, low-income housing, you know, but, you know, I mean, there's nothing that you can do about it. You know, if your mother is, you know, battling with certain things, you have to just make do with what you got, you know, but for the most part, there was always love. And so that's what carried us throughout the years and throughout my childhood was just the love.
Does Minneapolis, St. Paul, I mean, most people couldn't imagine that there's like a ghetto there or a hood. It's just a freezing cold place and the Mighty Ducks movie took place. Like, what else do people know about it, right? How would you compare the hood there to like a place like Chicago or Baltimore? Like, do they have what we would consider like a ghetto? Like an ethnic ghetto? I
mean,
with gangbanging.
You know, the funny thing about it is that's what people think. People think that you know, Minnesota is up north, so there's nothing really going on there. But it's actually cold in Minnesota, you know. And I'm not talking about the weather. You get what I'm saying to you? And I think that for the most part, we like it that way. You get what I'm saying to you? You can come up there, you can sleep on us if you want to. You get what I'm saying to you? And it's funny because it's like, I don't know if you were familiar, but a few months back, Bobby Shmurda, there was an incident with Bobby Shmurda up there in Minnesota at the club. Bobby Shmurda was at the club. I guess he had a disagreement with some guys and, you know, they kind of roughed him up, jumped on him, you know, and I think that people were actually surprised or shocked at, you know, what actually can happen and transpire. But Minneapolis and St. Paul is a dangerous place. Don't think that it's not, you know, but.
Well, I think the George Floyd riots, protests kind of shattered that white Minnesota picket fence image that most people have about that place. You know, they're like, wow, there's like some really wild, poor kind of up neighborhoods.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, we got hoods. You know, they gangbanging in Minnesota for sure.
Yeah. Well, are you Spanish?
Affiliated? No, I'm not. I'm black. I'm African American.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm African
But
American.
your name's Carlos?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know why my mom did that, you know, but they did it, you know. So yeah, my name, but I'm black for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only people that, I mean, I assume most people don't even know there's black people in Minneapolis, St. Paul, except for like the Somalis. You know what I mean?
I don't know what year it was that they actually migrated to Minnesota though, but you know, when I was coming up, the Somalians, they weren't up there like that. You know, they came like kind of like towards the end before I went to federal prison. That's when they kind of like started migrating up there. You know, and they have their own community and everything. I'm in Minnesota.
But they don't. Did they gangbang?
Of course, yeah, they got gang. I mean, they got some Somalian gangs up there, you know, for sure. I mean, I've never been exposed to it or been around it myself, just because I choose a different course of direction, you know, for the most part though. But yeah, they definitely got them up there for sure.
Do they have black gang, like traditional Bloods, Crips?
They got Bloods, Crips, GDs. They got Vice Lords.
Right.
They got Stones. They got everything up there. You know, yeah, they got everything. They got. What you got, the highs in Minneapolis, the lows, you know, they got everything. 10s, the 20s, like it's a lot of gangs up there.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so did you join a gang?
I mean, I was affiliated, you know, at one point in time, you know, but I don't consider myself to be affiliated with anything just because I'm a grown man. I'm 49 years old. You know, I'll grow all that, you know, just being incarcerated and being in prison, you know, you have to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and walk as a man. You know, I don't need no gang to be able to push through anything. You know, so but it was definitely affiliation. You know, growing up and coming up in St. Paul, Minnesota, for sure.
Okay, so were you getting into trouble as you grew up a little bit? Like,
yeah, you know, I would say I jumped off the porch probably at about 13, 14 years old. You know, 13, 14 years old, you know, just kind of just having that tough and rough childhood, you know, where, you know, I kind of had to fend for myself as it relates to me just being able to, you know, to get the things that I wanted and needed, you know. Being in the neighborhood and just, you know, you might see, you know, your friends, you know, they got the fresh shoes, you know, the fresh clothes and stuff like that. And that wasn't necessarily always the case in my situation coming up, you know, at a young age. But I got to a point where, you know, I ultimately said, man, listen, enough is enough, man. It's time to go out here and make something happen. So at about 14, that's when I jumped off the porch.
Selling drugs?
Yeah, we was doing whatever. We was selling drugs, stealing bikes. You know, we was doing whatever we could, you know, to get a couple dollars, you know. But my original goal doing it was just to get clothes and shoes, you know, to make sure that when I came to school, I had the new Jordans, you know, just like the other kids at the school that had them, you know. So that was important to me.
Did you go to college?
No, I didn't go to college, no.
Okay.
Nuh-uh.
What was your plan?
You know, of course, every drug dealer's plan is to make $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, you jump off the porch, you get in the streets just to make $1 million, become a millionaire. But it's like, you know, sometimes even if you see it, you keep going, you know, because selling dope is easy. It's just like having a conversation. It's not really that complicated to do that, you know, and so that was the goal in the end.
Did you make $1 million?
No, I didn't make $1 million, no.
What were you selling, weed?
We were selling weed. We were selling cocaine, you know. We were selling what was back then was crack. That's when that crack era kind of really came out, you know, 89, 90s and stuff like that, you know. That's when that came about.
Yeah. I bet you make a bunch of money in Minneapolis selling crack because there's if you bring
back
birds
then,
from out of town.
You know, you got like back then it definitely was a lot. It was a lot of money back then. That's why you had people like from California coming there. You had people from Detroit coming there. You had a lot of people coming up there because the money was different up there.
For sure.
Compared to what it is, you know, now.
Yeah, it was one of those out of town spots where that's like how the Bloods and Crips like started to populate all of these different Midwest towns is they needed a market. for their crack.
Absolutely.
And that's, to this day, that's their legacy.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you were doing that, selling crack and shit. Did you catch a case? Did you ever go to state prison?
Yeah, my first case that I caught which sent me to state prison was I shot two people. Because I had a disagreement or a dispute with one of the guys that was there, and the other guy, he just happened to just be, a casualty of war. He just happened to be there, so he ultimately got shot as well too, though. But and it was a situation where we had an issue or a dispute over some cocaine. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 17. I got certified as an adult. Went to trial, lost, and I received 36 months.
That's it?
For assault in the second degree, yeah. Because it was only second degree assault. Yeah.
So the guys lived, they survived?
Yeah, they survived, both of them, yeah.
Okay, so you only got 3 years. You blew trial and you only got 3 years.
Yeah, and I ended up doing 24 months off. And in the state prison at that time, you only did 8 months off a year.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I did 24 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think Minnesota has like pretty, compared to other states, like less harsh sentencing because it's a more liberal state? Or how do you see that?
I mean, it's been so long, for me since I was sentenced. I don't really I don't know like what that entails now. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that entails just because I haven't experienced it. I know then it was lenient because I know a couple of guys, growing up, at a young age, 16, 17 years old, they caught murder charges. And at the time, they was only giving out 10, 12 years for it.
Right.
Back then.
Yeah.
But now it's different. You commit murder in the state of Minnesota now, they're gonna slam you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna slam you.
Probably because there were so many murders.
Yeah.
And they did bring the hammer down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you realize that was for shooting a couple of dudes? Like that was like that's like a weed sentence.
Yeah.
I got 36 months for selling weed.
I mean, and ultimately that's what that's why I never woke up.
You didn't take it serious.
I didn't take it serious because, you go into state prison, you do time, it's sweet, it's easy. Mm-hmm. Go in there, get you a TV, get you a fan, get you a hot pot, and you kick your feet up, and you just, you're going to be right back in 18 months, 2 years.
Yeah.
So you don't, it's just hard to take it serious.
Right.
At all.
Okay, so you're back out on the street in no time.
Yeah.
You didn't clean yourself up? You went back to it?
Went straight back to it. That was the goal.
Selling dope?
Yeah, that, and then just being in the streets. You always tell yourself, I just got to be a little bit slicker, and so when you go to prison and you don't get caught for drugs, you still think you're a good drug dealer, ultimately. And I went to prison for shooting two people, so it wasn't for me being caught with no drugs. So of course, I can easily walk back out here and sell some dope, and so that's what I did.
What is the TMC on your head?
It's the marathon continues. I'm someone who is, I'm inspired by people young and old. And everything that Nipsey Hussle represented when it came to the music, everything that he was pushing, as it relates to black ownership, it's inspiring. It was always inspiring to me, and so when I walked out of prison, I walked out with that mindset, and that's why I put it there, because that's what it stands for. It stands for, the marathon continues.
Did you have some respect in prison, like when you went in for shooting a couple of guys? Like, does that even matter in Minnesota?
I mean, it
like
does.
In the state system?
It does, you just in your neighborhood in general, of course, people know you. And I definitely was somebody who people knew. Like a lot of people absolutely know who I am in my neighborhood, from St. Paul to Minneapolis as well too, for good things and bad things. Absolutely. So, people, of course, respected me for a lot of things just because of how I carried myself, on the streets, and the fact that I wasn't going for anything. Even as a young age, I wasn't going for nothing. And so because I was the young cat in the neighborhood where I don't care if you was an older dude. If you was an older dude and we getting into it, hey, look, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't backing down from it.
Right. You're not showing respect just because they're older.
Nah, absolutely not. Not if we was into it. I wasn't doing that.
Now, so what happened when you got out of prison? Did you expand your business?
Nah, it really wasn't about expand. Like I didn't have no super duper big operation or nothing like that going on. I was just like anybody else in the neighborhood. We just posted up on the block. We walked down Selby, up and down Selby, sometimes cross the bridge, go over to the other side, and so that's just pretty much what it was. Because back then it was easy to sell dope. You can just get on your bike and just ride around, and you had fiends, that was just everywhere. Right. Hey, so you got some work? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it. So we might have a big Ziploc bag with 9 ounces, just bust all down. You know what I'm saying? We got pills, we got 8 balls, we got quarters, we got everything. You know what I'm saying? And we just get on the bike and just ride, or sometimes just walk up and down the block.
On a bicycle?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's in Minneapolis.
Yeah, it was St. Paul.
St. Paul.
St. Paul, yeah, it was St. Paul.
Yeah, it's environmentally a sound way to sell dope.
Yeah, it was different in Minneapolis. Minneapolis kind of had a little bit more structure. They were a little bit more territorial. Mm-hmm. South Minneapolis, as well as North Minneapolis, they're a little bit more territorial. Where it's like, if you or I came over there, they're gonna know we're not from over there. You get what I'm saying to you? And if we go over there and try to post up and do something and sell some dope over there, then it's gonna be a problem for sure in Minneapolis or north, or on the north side or the south side.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have a crew?
Nah, I didn't have no crew. I just had a bunch of homies that I grew up with, friends and best friends. And stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the crew.
Yeah, I ain't gonna say we had a crew, but it was just my homies.
Family.
Yeah, it was just the homies. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you got an incredibly light sentence for something serious, and then, as we'll see in a little bit, for something less serious, you got the harshest penalty.
Right.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah.
But you got a felony now. You're on paper. Did you catch another case before your federal charge?
Yeah, I did. I had got caught. I had got caught with a 1/4 pound of weed just on a humbug. Just got caught a 1/4 pound of weed. I was actually driving a friend's car whose tabs were expired. Got pulled over. They fined a 1/4 pound of weed. Go to jail. I was on probation for it. I was on probation for the shooting still.
Right.
And so when I got caught with that, because I had so many criminal history points at this particular time from just, a bunch of small stuff, it was an automatic commit to prison. So I couldn't get probation or anything for it. It was automatic commit to prison. So I ended up getting 17 months in prison. Where I only served, I think it was like 12 months, and I was released, and then just went back to the same thing all over again as well too. And then I would say I probably was out maybe 3 or 4 months before I caught my second shooting.
What happened with that?
Second shooting was a guy. Again, there was an issue and a dispute and a disagreement over drugs, and I shot him. I shot him. And so that one was a heavier sentence. That one was a 52-month sentence.
Damn, you're really about that thug?
I mean, I was at that time for sure.
Wow. So the guy survived again?
Yeah, he survived. Yeah.
So you were hard, but you were a lousy shot.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even so much as, I mean, when you're young, it's like everything is really off impulse. You know what I'm saying to you? The second, I wasn't trying to kill the second guy. I shot him in his ass. That was really just more of a statement than anything.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to kill him, I could have killed him, but I wasn't trying to kill him. I was in the car with him.
How'd you shoot him in the ass when he was in the car?
Because he was trying to hop out. Yeah, so when he tried to hop out and run, that's when I shot him.
Damn, dude, I got jacked back in the day for a couple pounds of weed, and the kid jumped out of the car. I should have just shot him in his ass. I didn't have a gun, though. I never carried a gun.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you got a longer sentence now. So you're racking up a criminal history, which is relevant when we talk about, the thing that changed your life.
Yeah.
So you went back to prison. Mm-hmm. Is there are you in a maximum security prison? What is Minnesota State Prison
it's like? It's like close custody. You're behind the wall, but it's not like you kind of can consider it a max because we have a super max facility in Minnesota. It's called Oak Park Heights. Oh, okay. It's built underground. And they do house some federal inmates there. Like if there's guys in the federal system that can't be in that federal circuit, they'll hide them in Oak Park Heights.
And it's underground?
It's underground, super max.
Crazy. Is it because it's so cold? That's why they build it underground?
I don't know why they did that, but that's a Supermax facility, Oak Park Heights.
Okay, so you didn't go there?
No, I didn't go there. I was in Stillwater.
Okay.
Stillwater and St. Cloud, which is like they're like you kind of can consider them max, but it's close custody though.
And do you have enemies in there for shooting people, or do you have to run? Are you hustling in there?
Nah. State was different. State was like gladiator school. Of course we're gonna go in there. You're gonna fight. And you're gonna see probably dudes that that you may have had issues with, but for the most part, like I said, like me and the people that I grew up with were respected. And we were feared. Like we never really had no issues. Like I ain't never had no issues in prison.
Right.
Yeah, no state prison, not at all.
What are the demographics in a Minnesota state prison?
You had blacks, you had whites, you had Native Americans.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's crazy because actually, when I was doing time in the state, the Native Americans were the ones who was really going the hardest. Yeah. They were going the hardest. Like they were big on respect. They was big on everything, And so when it came to whites or when it came to blacks, we really it was us just really passing time and passing through there and getting up out of there. So but you had situations,
right,
disagreements,
right,
yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. So how long did you do on that second shooting?
52 months is what they gave me. I did 37 months.
Okay, so you did 3 years.
Yeah.
Are you? By the way, did your boy that you shot? Did he snitch on you?
Yeah, he cooperated.
Okay, so everybody's telling.
Yeah.
It's like. People are always like, nowadays everybody tells. I think everybody's been telling always. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Some people, yeah.
Okay, so, and did you do that stretch? You do that time like standing on your head?
Yeah, I did. It was that was a little tougher bit, I would say, just because the first bit I had a really good support system, just with my kid's mother. But she had told me that after the first time, she said, listen, you go back, I'm not going to be there.
Right.
And so when I went back at the time, too, I had actually, I had spent so much money trying to fight the case that when I walked in there, I was broke. You know what I'm saying? And so, but of course, I had a few people that looked out for me, and I was able to get the things that I needed when I originally went in. But that one was a little tougher. Just because there wasn't the same support system
for sure
as before. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. But it sounds like you got the balls to like go to court, like to take this shit to trial.
No, I copped out. I copped out on the second one. The second one, I copped out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, second I didn't blow a trial on the second one. Yeah, first one I did though.
Okay, so what was your mindset coming home from that second long bid for the shooting?
It was pretty much the same mindset. It wasn't anything different. I just kind of like switched a little things up, just as it relates to how I hustled. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying to you? It was no longer on the block. It was off the phone now.
Right.
You get what I'm saying to you? Because like I said to you, back in the days, it was you could walk up the street, you could ride the bike, you can do whatever. But now everything is off the phone. So just pretty much doing that, and then trying not to be as seen. As much.
Right.
Was the mission.
What year was that?
I got out 2001.
Okay.
That's when I got out.
And then you caught your federal case in 2004.
Yep, 2004.
Okay, so what happened in those years?
Just like I said, just pretty much just getting back and just doing the same thing. Of course, I was just a little bit older. I wasn't, I was still in my like early 20s, mid 20s. Is the age I was at though. So. Just pretty much just getting back to it, doing the exact same thing. The mindset was still the same, chase a buck. It wasn't anything different, but just trying to be a little bit more smarter and strategic. That was just it.
So you're still trying to become a millionaire. That's the goal.
Of course, you're still chasing it. You're still chasing the dream, that illusion of it for sure. Yeah.
How did you stay out of beefs? Like, what were you catching these shootings? What were the beefs over? People owed you money or?
That or, people just trying to, pretty much, not everybody is going to respect certain things, if that makes sense. Not everybody's going to respect certain things. And so I think that when you don't respect certain things, there's a consequence for it. You get what I'm saying to you?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't understand what you're saying.
No, I'm saying
respect over what?
I'm saying like if you and I have an agreement on something, right, and you don't respect what the agreement is, then we're gonna have an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I'm gonna have an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So whatever agreement you and I come to, I'm asking you to respect that. And so once you don't respect it, then okay, all right, well, just make sure you can handle what comes with that.
Were these your workers? Were these guys?
No,
that
it
would
wasn't
work
that. It
for
was
you,
just, it might have been, if I give you something and I say, okay, this is what I want back for it,
right?
And you don't come back with what you're supposed to come back with, then
So money,
yeah,
as I say,
sure, absolutely.
Okay, what else could it be over, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's all there is in the street.
Yeah.
So the case that you ended up catching was not over drugs.
Nah.
You actually never caught a drug case.
Never caught a drug
except
case.
for the weed.
The
little bullshit
yeah,
weed or whatever.
Yeah.
Which you probably would have got probation for if you weren't already on probation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, lead us up to that. What had you done these kind of licks?
No,
before?
What it was like, I was the person that you could call, because like I said, I was somebody who at that time, like, if you was my homie or whatever, and you say, man, look, hey, can I get a gun? I need a pistol from you. I'll come get it. And so that's how everything first started. I might get a phone call, hey man, let me borrow a pistol real quick. All right, come get it. And so I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you got going on at first originally. And so as my co-defendants are committing the crimes, they're coming back, they're giving my firearm back, and they're also handing me some money. I'm not asking no questions though, because I'm a street dude. I'm not going to ask you no question about where you got it from. Mm-hmm. I'm naive to what you actually really got going on. So it happened a few times, and then after it happened a few times, my brother calls me, and he's like, "Hey man, turn on the news, the 6 o'clock news." And so I'm like, "Okay." I turn on the 6 o'clock news. I see some dudes on the news. I know who they are. And I'm like, like this is what's going on. So my little buddy, I call him, like, hey, where you at? He like, I'm in the neighborhood. I'm like, I'm gonna pull up on you, man. I pull up on him, and I'm like, yo, that's what you've been doing this whole time? Like, you're tripping. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
what were they doing?
Just committing robberies. I'm like, man, like, hey, get my firearm. Because now you make it to the news like, you going to jail.
Like hitting like corner stores?
No, they were like bars. They had like pool tabs, right? And so, the pool tabs that had tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And so it was like more like a smash and grab for them, in and out, 2 minutes tops maybe, I don't know,
Right.
And so that's ultimately what was going on,
Damn, it's gangster shit.
Yeah.
That's cowboy shit.
I mean, that's what they thought. Till the feds come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you pull up on your homie and you were like, give me my guns back.
Yeah,
I don't want to be affiliated with this.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, but me being, who I am, I didn't let it stop right there, which I should have. You know what I'm saying? I didn't let it stop right there. I allowed it to go on, even after that when I shouldn't have. And so now, even when I didn't know, now I know, so that makes me a co-conspirator.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying to you? But again, I'm so naive because I'm saying to myself, well, I'm not really harming anybody or doing nothing, right? But then I get to a place and a space where I'm like, oh, this is what y'all got going on? This is how much you're getting? You get what I'm saying to you?
How much money could they get?
I mean, it was like, it might be 30, 40, something like that at a time.
Off of one pool hall?
Absolutely. It was like they're called pool tabs, and it's like a gambling, like a little card or a ticket. Like you can go in there, you could pull them off, and you might have $1,000 on it, a $1,500 winner or something like that on it. And so people pay them. You got some that cost $1, some that cost $5, And so what happened? But that's a separate like entity from whatever the establishment is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying to you? Well, the bar might sell liquor or something like that. This is something completely over here, and it's just separate.
Oh, it's almost like the Keno machines that people go into. They have those in Oregon where it's a bar, but in the corner, the vendor supplies the Keno machine, and you'd be over there just pressing buttons like you're in a casino.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, but they were just robbing the bars.
Right, yep.
That's
the
gang.
Pool tabs.
Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. And they could get
in the bar.
And they carried that much cash?
Yeah, some of them do for sure.
Okay, so they're making real money.
They were,
and they're drawn down. They're not. This is not like a smash and grab. They're armed robbery.
Yeah, they were armed robberies. For sure. Yeah, they were definitely armed robberies for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. How many robberies like this did they commit? Do you know?
In total, I want to say it was. I know when my first co-defendant got arrested, he had 32 counts on him. I want to say that they said that he had committed maybe 30. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I know the indictment that I was indicted under, there was 11 that I was charged with.
And they're hitting these spots all over the St. Paul, Minneapolis area?
St. Paul, Minneapolis area and other little suburban areas that were in like Hennepin County or Ramsey County. Yeah, they were considered suburb area.
Okay, so why are you the one supplying the guns?
Well,
they can't find their own guns?
They didn't have the access to them at that. I mean, they could have probably, but they knew I had them. But again, like I said to you, once I got wind of what was actually going on, like I said, and me not stopping it, then I found myself becoming more involved than I should have. You get what I'm saying to you? And that's ultimately how I got jammed up in it because, like I said to you, I'm a conspirator. I'm a co-conspirator now.
Well, what was your for supplying guns? What was your taste? What would they throw you?
I mean, I just started off just getting like a couple thousand.
Yeah.
I just started off just getting a couple thousand.
Yeah.
But then as I got more involved in it, like then my break was 2 ways, 3 ways.
How did you get involved?
I'm saying just for us like partaking.
Oh, okay.
Just partaking and everything. Like it became, okay, well I need my cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, if it was 2 people, 3 people, whatever, like break me down.
That's wild. So you were taking part in these robberies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it exciting?
I mean, the money was good, so of course at that particular time it was exciting.
Were there cameras now? Or there's starting to be more security cameras.
There definitely was then.
Yeah.
There definitely was then though, but it was always, they always had masks and stuff on.
Yeah. So you guys ran in with masks and nobody's putting up any kind of.
No, nobody's putting up.
It's not like the South where the bartender might have a gun underneath the joint.
No, nobody's putting up no resistance.
Yeah.
They wasn't doing that at that time. No.
Okay, so take us through one of these licks, right? Like how long do you spend casing it out? How do you know when there's going to be money in there?
I mean, you don't really know that. You don't really know that. And it was really more or less about at that time finding ones that were like on back streets. You find someone on a back street, it's not no pedestrians, nobody walking around or nothing like that. And you want to kind of, you kind of just get a feel of the area. You get what I'm saying to you, if that makes sense. You get a feel of the area. And you're going to know if it's crowded or if it's not crowded. That's just how they originally figured it out. And so once they knew that it wasn't something that was crowded, it was easy to just go in there. And it was usually, you would want to wait kind of like later, kind of like towards close. or whatever, so it would be less people as possible.
And the bartenders would be the one holding the pool tabs?
No, it would be the people who ran it.
Oh, I see.
It was always separate.
I see. So people are actually in there running it along with the machines. People are taking bets. It's almost like sports betting, essentially.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Right.
Kind of.
It's not like Keno, or it's not like the lottery.
It's kind of like the lottery because, like I said, you don't just have a ticket where you're scratching something off. You get like a little ticket and you're peeling something off.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying to you? And if you peel it off and you have a winner, then the person that's running it cashes you out.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a state doing this. This might be unique to Minnesota. I mean, maybe they do it in some other states, but I don't know. This is that's weird. It's almost like some mafia gambling, but it's the state doing it.
The thing of it is that the statute that we were actually indicted under is a racketeering statute. Right. The Hobbs Act is a racketeering statute.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into that. Like, explain how robbing these local bars and gambling joints became federal. This is something. So you took place in you're indicted under 11 robberies, is what they say that you partook in. Over what period of time?
A 2-year period, 2002 to 2004. A 2-year period is how long they say the conspiracy lasted.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So you guys were getting away with it.
Yeah, for years.
Were you still selling drugs, or did you just make this your main thing?
No, of course.
Okay.
That's what the money was for. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, it was to get more. You know what I'm saying to you? Like, that wasn't the focal point of the goal for myself. I don't know what their focal point or what their goal was, but for myself, it was, to get money to get more drugs.
Yeah, to get a bigger re-up.
A bigger package for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you were selling coke?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you grow your business thanks to this new income?
I mean, yeah, but when the one thing that I didn't respect was I didn't respect the money. I didn't value the money and respect it the way that I should have. And so what happens is if you make 30, 40, 50,000, you're going to blow it because you're not respecting it. You know what I'm saying? And then if you're doing something stupid like this, and it's happening where you're getting 20, 30,000 in 2 minutes, you think you can do it again. And then you think you can do it again. And then you think you can do it again and get away with it. And so you don't never tell yourself you're going to get caught for it. So I didn't respect the money at all. So even if I made, 50, 60,000, whatever, I'm blowing 40 of it, or 50 of it in probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now you got to go back to the table and do it all over again.
Do another robbery.
Yeah, you got to do whatever you got to do.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that's some gangster shit, man. I've heard of I was down with a lot of guys who got slammed with a lot of time for this kind of like ongoing, because you guys aren't doing this like once or twice because you're down on your habit. You're a dope fiend and you rob a bar. This is a business.
I mean,
this is a racket. This is organized crime.
That's what they considered it to be. But we was just some dudes in the neighborhood who was just trying to chase a buck.
Organized yourselves and committed multiple ongoing crimes. And I'm not even and I hate the justice system, but I'm just from an outsider civilian perspective now, this is organized crime.
That's how somebody could look at it for sure.
Tell us about how they got onto you and how you were eventually arrested.
Well, they weren't on to anybody. What happened was one of my codefendants had got caught. He got caught red-handed, where he had went and committed one robbery, and then I guess the robbery he committed, I guess it wasn't enough money for him, so he drove from that location and went to another location not too far from where the crime was committed at, and after he committed that robbery, he got arrested. He got caught, right? And so when he got brought in, that's when he started cooperating, and he started telling on the guys that he originally committed the robberies, but he didn't say anything about me. It took a while for my name to come up. And my name came up once they got to asking where the weapons came from. Then that's when my name comes up. And so once my name comes up, then that's when I think the case, because I was the last one to come in, I think that's when the case kind of got a little bit bigger, I guess. I don't know if you want to say.
Well, it's still on a state level at this point, right?
No, it was federal then.
Okay.
When the first guy got arrested, it was on the state level. Like I said, he was for the 2 robberies. And he's down there cooperating against the other co-defendants.
Telling him about these other robberies too?
Right. Because he got caught with a firearm, they indicted him for being a felon in possession of a firearm. That's how they brought the case to federal court originally. And as he's cooperating, and then now they're bringing the other co-defendants in, now, of course, it's a federal case.
Do you think if he had just kept his mouth shut, he just said, yeah, look, I did the 2 robberies and I got a gun, you know, he would have done some time, you know, might have done 10 years or something? Mm-hmm. Do you think they would have been able to make a bigger case?
No, I mean, if he doesn't say anything and nobody else commits any crimes, we may have not got caught for it. You know what I'm saying? Because there was no, they didn't know who committed any, like, right. they didn't know who committed any of these crimes until he came in and until he started cooperating.
And so that guy, what was his eventual sentence?
He ended up, when he first got indicted, he had a 32 count indictment.
So 32 counts. How, if they only have you on 2 robberies red-handed, how do they indict you on 32 times?
Because
he confess?
He confessed.
Oh, you stupid.
And confessed because once he told on the other co-defendants, now, like I said, they put the whole entire case together and realized that he was responsible for partaking in X amount of robberies. And when he first came in the paper, they said he was facing 382 years. But because of his cooperation, he only got 6.5 years.
But I wonder if he hadn't told on himself. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm trying to get to. Like, do you think if he had just kept his mouth shut, just 2 robberies and the gun, the sentence probably would have been less? It probably would have been about 6.5 years, right?
Yeah. If it would have stayed on the state level, probably.
Right. Or maybe a little more.
Yeah, probably.
You know? Yeah. But like, you go and tell and then tell on yourself, it's actually worse. Sometimes the guy who tattletales, it's actually worse for him in the sentencing than it would be if he just took whatever bullshit he got caught for. Mm-hmm. God damn, that's crazy. It just takes one guy, just folded.
Yeah.
How close was he to you? Like, how well did you know these guys?
No, I mean, like, you know, I grew up with him, and he was the one who was the closest to me, because we hung out every day. You know, we hung out every day, and it's crazy because it's like, I met him in the county jail when I was going to do my second state bit. I met him in the county jail, and it's crazy because I should have knew then that he was no good, because he had a $300 bond and he couldn't bond out. You know, like I wouldn't say, like, it was like either $300 or a $600 bond, and wouldn't nobody come get him.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
You don't have 10% of $600
You get what I'm saying? So I should have knew then that he was no good. Wow. If you can't get out of jail on a $300 or $600 bond, you're no good.
No.
You know what I'm saying? That means that you done some crazy stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, but I had took a liking to him, you know, and it's crazy because it's like, after taking a liking to him, I actually bonded him out while in there, while we were together. I'm like, you know, because I'm like, he's young.
Yeah. I'm
like, man, you know what? Man, I'm gonna get you out.
Yeah.
You know, and so I ended up bonding him out. You know.
So you really knew these guys well. I grew
up with them in my neighborhood. I grew up with them, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so how long after this guy got arrested and started talking did everybody start to go down? And then when were you finally brought in? Do you remember the date of the year?
I got brought in June 4th, 2024, and I want to say maybe about 2 or 3 months, or maybe 3 or 4 months prior to me being taken into custody. That's when my other co-defendants were taken into custody. I'm not sure how long it was after he got arrested that the other ones came in. I just know that it was probably 2 or 3 months after they rounded up the other co-defendants that I came. I was the last one to come in.
And were you arrested by the FBI?
I was arrested by a sergeant. By the St. Paul. He was a sergeant in the St. Paul Police Department. Okay. He knew who I was, and he knew because he was working, I think, with the ATF at the time too. And so once the wart came out, he knew like what the neighborhood I was at, where I frequently hung out at or whatever. And so he came looking for me.
But it was a federal warrant.
It was a federal warrant.
Got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, it was a warrant for a complaint. I wasn't indicted yet, but it was a complaint.
All right.
Yeah.
Got it. So, and you've got this huge rap sheet now. What happens to everybody else? Like as the court proceedings, because now you're in this like RICO conspiracy. Mm-hmm. It's the Hobbs Act is what exactly? Explain for people.
The Hobbs Act is a racketeering statute, which deals with robbery and extortion. And it was an act that was enacted in 1946. And the act was the original goal of the Hobbs Act was to combat robbery and extortion, basically from like the mobsters. Mm-hmm. If you remember back in the days, they were hijacking trucks and stuff like that. That's what the Hobbs Act was originally for, because now you're affecting interstate commerce and the flow of goods of interstate commerce. You have a truck that's en route from New Jersey to New York, and you guys stop it, and you guys hijack it. Well, you affect interstate commerce because you just took the whole truck. Right. And that's what the whole goal of the Hobbs Act was originally for. And Senator Hobbs, like if you were to dig deeper into the history of the Hobbs Act, Senator Hobbs specifically stated that the act was not enacted to combat mom and pop robberies. It said, you get what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't know that, because the federal government, their loophole is, well, it affected interstate commerce. And like I said, if you go in there and rob a 7-Eleven right now, because the Snicker that they have in there that they're selling is not manufactured in Austin, Texas. Right. Therefore, you affect the interstate commerce because you just depleted the funds of 7-Eleven that allows them to be able to order Snickers or whatever other supplies that they have in 7-Eleven. That's how they ultimately say that they have jurisdiction.
It's crazy. Yeah. So how did they say or try to say that what you guys were doing, sticking up gambling and pool parlors, how was that affecting interstate commerce?
Because the liquor that the establishment sold was not liquor that was manufactured in the state of Minnesota. That's how they say you affect interstate commerce, because again, like I said to you, if you go in there and you rob an establishment of $30,000 or $40,000, now they're saying you depleted the funds of being able to order liquor that was manufactured in Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying to you? And that's how they justify it.
But under those guidelines, you could make almost anything. We live in a connected world. Almost nothing we consume is manufactured in our state.
Exactly.
Everything comes from China via the port of Los Angeles, where it comes in. I mean, we live in a global economy, so anything could be affecting interstate commerce.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah. I mean, and it is, but when you have, these judges as well as these U.S. attorneys who have these agendas, it's going to always be hard to combat that. You get what I'm saying to you? And it's crazy because it's like you see people in state prison for robbing, like I say, your 7-Eleven or for robbing anything, and it'll just be a state case. Yeah. They pick and they choose which cases that they want to bind over to federal court. And so even when we got indicted, like I said, it was 6 of us total. Mm-hmm. We were all African Americans. And so, you had the NAACP, the St. Paul branch, went down to the U.S. Attorney's Office trying to get answers, because they're asking them, like, why are you guys indicting these young, African Americans for committing these crimes when they're local robberies? You get what I'm saying to you?
I think of the scale of it.
Right, that's what was one of the biggest things that I couldn't really wrap my head around, and that's why I ultimately blew trial, was because I'm like, because I had my lawyers coming in telling me like, hey, this is not no federal case. So once you tell me that, you know, and I got a little bit of money that I can use with a lawyer to fight with, oh, I'm gone. Let's go. You know what I'm saying to you?
Right.
Now I don't know how to come in and accept responsibility. I don't know how to say, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, I partaked in, you know, this conspiracy, you know, and whatever, you know, I'm subjected to, go ahead and receive the time. It's hard for me to do that.
Right.
When I'm having my lawyer tell me, hey, this is not no federal case. You know, and then you have other people, and then even just the little research that I was doing, I'm saying to myself, like, nah, this ain't no federal case. And that's what I fought against.
So your lawyers were telling you this was a case you could beat?
No, they were telling me it wasn't a federal case. And so when you tell me that, and I'm like, and there's like, well, you know, this didn't really affect interstate commerce. You know, this is what I'm thinking. We're going to be able to go in here and attack and argue.
What were they trying to do? They were trying to get it dismissed?
They originally were trying to get the court to dismiss it based on lack of subject matter jurisdiction. But of course, it got denied, you know.
All right. Okay. So after these motions keep getting denied, you're sitting in jail.
Yeah.
Do the attorneys then say, okay, well, it looks like you're either going to have to take a plea? What are they offering you as a plea deal?
Well, the first plea that they offered me, which they offered everybody, and everybody, the crazy thing about it is everybody involved in the case either pled to 22 years or 21 years. Even the original co-defendant who cooperated, everybody pled to that, either 22 or 21 years. But after their cooperation, of course, they got, you know, their sentences reduced.
So everybody cooperated?
Everybody cooperated except me.
Against who?
Me.
So they obviously tried to get you to cooperate.
Yeah.
So it would have been just like everybody telling on each other.
Right.
I see. I see. And so what did they ultimately get?
Well, the first plea deal that they came to me with was 22 years. Of course, I rejected it. But then the second one, which was like 4 days before trial, they offered me 15 years. And I was going to take the 15 years, but when my lawyer told me that the 15 years came with cooperation, I'm like, I'm not doing that. You know, I've never been a person who, I'm just not built like that. You know, I've never been a person who, if you catch me doing something, to then turn around and say, okay, well, you know what, hey, I bought drugs from Johnny, or I bought drugs from so-and-so, or I did this with so-and-so. I've just never been built like that. You know, if you catch me, I'm gonna lay down, I'm gonna do my time. You know what I'm saying to you? But you have a lot of people who don't live by that, you know, and it's crazy because people don't understand that snitching has become a part of the game now. You know, it's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we live in. The way that this new generation has shaped everything, you know, people don't live by those same codes and principles and morals that they did when I was coming up. You get what I'm saying to you? That's why you see the things that you see in the news right now. You know, you see people, you know, even big time people. Let's just look at the situation with Pooh Shiesty and Gucci Mane right now. What's going on with that situation? You know, look at the situation where people try to say, you know, Big Meech's third party cooperated. You get what I'm saying to you? Snitching has become a part of the game. Not saying that I don't know any of these people, but not to say that this is, you know, that they did those things, but just saying like snitching has become a part of the game. That's not something I believe in. I still believe in, you know, you do something, you get caught, man, lay down and do your time. Okay,
but at this point, and I respect that, definitely. At this point, though, 4 days before trial, have all of your Codies already snitched on you?
Yeah. All of them had already cooperated.
And what does that mean? Just proffering, just telling everything?
Proffering, telling everything. Some stuff was true. Some stuff, you know, some stuff were lies as well too, just to make sure that they got the time cut, you know, that they were hoping to get.
And they all end up had they taken the 15-year plea deals at this point?
They took 22 and 21 years.
That was their plea?
That was their plea agreement.
Even for cooperating?
Yeah, that was their plea agreement.
Ah, that does suck.
Yeah.
So you actually had an opportunity to get less time for cooperating against people that had already cooperated against you. Wow. I respect that. I mean, that's a principled move because 9 out of 10 people would be like, oh, well, why not?
Right.
The government's literally just telling you, we don't want to go to trial, man.
Yeah.
Game's over.
Yeah.
All these dudes told on you. So confess.
Yeah.
What they're trying to get you to do is confess because they know everything. There's no, it's not like anybody else is taking it to the box.
Yeah. And I had people who were frustrated with me because I wouldn't take the deal. But like I said, at the end of the day, it wasn't about me pleasing them. It was about what I stood on, you know, and just not believing in that. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And plus you got to go to federal prison being
Labeled
a rat, having
sure.
bad paperwork.
Yeah, no, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
And you've got 11 counts of robbery?
No, altogether it was 21. I was found guilty on a 21 count indictment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they charged,
which was conspiracy for count 1, aiding and abetting, counts 2 through 10, and then counts 11 through 19. Aiding and abetting a 924C conviction or 924C charge, and then 2 counts of felon in possession of a firearm.
Okay. And did your lawyer at this point advise you to take the deal?
Of course, my lawyer. She tried to. One of my lawyers tried to convince me to take the deal for sure. Yeah, 15
years.
Yeah, she was actually. She and I got to it. You know, she and I had we had a real argument, a real bad argument. Because I wouldn't take it.
What was the nature of the cooperating? Like, what did they want you to do? Just sit down and make a statement?
Well, see, the crazy thing about it is that during the course of me being in the county jail, they had sent 55 photos to every single co-defendant, right, that were numbered, right? And there was a separate paper, you know, and they wanted you to write your name down to every number of the people that you knew. And they were dudes that were in my neighborhood that I grew up with. And it's like, you know, here it is. We have our own case. These dudes don't even know they're under these people's radar because there's 55 photos of people that I absolutely know. You get what I'm saying to you? But I'm not finna be writing my name on no paper identifying nobody and coming in and proffering and giving you any information about dudes in my neighborhood.
Oh, so they want more than just you guys telling
Absolutely.
yourselves.
Yeah, they whatever you can come in and offer up, they wanted it. 1,000% they wanted it. Wow. So that's like, you know, a lot of people I did share that with, like even like one of my closest buddies, it was a picture of him. You know, and so after I had got convicted, I sent them the picture like, hey, look, this is what, like, and the funny thing about it is, when I sent him that picture, he changed his life. Like when I tell you and when I tell you he's doing so good right now, married, kids, he changed his life because it was a wake-up call for him.
Right, like you're on their radar.
Yeah,
fall back.
Absolutely. Yeah, get out the way.
Wow.
Yeah, get out the way for sure.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
I bet he appreciates that.
Oh, for sure.
Greatly.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have advised you as a lawyer to tell on yourself and your buddies. This is just as a lawyer. I'm just thinking strategy, right? I'm trying to get you home. I would have said, yeah, lie, say you don't know shit about anything else, and just, we had a big marijuana group that we filmed with a couple of years ago, and they were these rednecks out of South Florida, and they had imported like hundreds of tons of Colombian weed back like in the 70s and 80s and shit like that.
Yeah.
And when they got the indictment, they all made an agreement. They all told on each other, but knowingly. They all agreed, like, we're going to cooperate against each other. And, you know, they all came home.
Yeah.
That's the part of the game that's like the strategy that big time criminals use. But respect for just standing on your business, though. Yeah. I understand both sides. So how long did trial last? And did your co-Ds take the stand?
Yeah, they took the stand. My trial, it lasted, I would say, maybe a little over, maybe a week. I know they deliberated for 4 days. They deliberated for 4 days. So I would say maybe a week and a half is how long it lasted, maybe.
Was that hard watching your friends take a stand in front of a federal jury and just tell on you? It must have been.
It was, you know, there definitely was some anger there, you know, especially when it's like, these are dudes that you looked out for and protected, because they was soft. You know what I'm saying to you? And so, it was dudes that I stood up for on many occasions. Dudes that I built out of jail on many occasions. You go to jail, most people when they go to jail, the first people they call is they gonna call their lady. Hey, come get me. They wasn't doing, they was calling me. And I would go get them, because if you and I were cool and we dealt with each other and you call my phone and you need to get built out of jail, I'm coming to get you. So I was definitely, there was anger and I was hurt, but the one thing that I realized, today is that I put myself in that situation. I put myself in that situation to allow anybody to stand before myself and 12 jurors and 2 lawyers and a prosecutor and a judge to be able to point the finger and tell me about anything. So I don't blame it's my fault because I put myself in that situation.
What was the mistake, the initial mistake? Was it giving the dude those guns?
No, the initial mistake was just me not realizing and understanding that it's another way. It's a different way. I think that when you grow up, in a neighborhood where you see all of these different things that are happening and transpiring when it comes to just dealing with the streets, just when, selling drugs and things of that nature. Like I said to you, it's easy to do. It's not complicated or hard to do. It's just as easy as me and you having a conversation. You can easily just get involved. You can either be good at it or bad at it. But for the most part, you also see those same people who you grew up with in your community doing something different, and to this day are successful for it. So for me, the mistake was just not realizing that it was a different way. That was the mistake.
The jury deliberated for 4 days?
Yeah, they deliberated.
Wow.
They went in Monday, came back Friday.
What was your defense? What was the nature of your defense? What were your lawyers trying to do?
The nature of the defense was that I was never caught. Nobody identified me. No eyewitness ever identified me. I'd never been caught with a firearm. And so it was basically my word against theirs. And I think that even just remembering trial, I can remember a couple of the jurors shaking their heads, like when my co-defendants were cooperating and telling, because there was, like I said, there was truth to some of the things that they said for sure, but then there was also a bunch of lies. And so I think that there were parts and moments where jurors kind of like knew that. So for them to sit there and deliberate for 4 days, I kind of felt like if I would have testified that I may have beat them,
So it's pretty rare that a defendant in a criminal trial takes the stand,
Right.
but was that a thought? Did you bring that up to your attorneys?
No, I mean, I didn't want to take a stand because I knew my past and my priors would come up, though. But that was a thought after I got convicted.
Yeah.
After sitting back and thinking about it, I'm saying to myself, like, man, I should have probably gotten a stand, because in a situation like that, if everybody is saying that this is what you're doing, and there's no eyewitnesses to be able to come in and corroborate that you're actually doing this, is just your word against theirs, I think that any rational person, it's going to be hard for them to believe, well, if this person's not going to stand up and defend himself, then it must be true.
That is really interesting.
And
I hope some lawyers or some criminals that are facing trial hear that. How many people are cooperating against you?
It was
identifying you on the stand?
4. 4 co-defendants cooperated.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, it's with the feds, people have been convicted for less.
Oh, for sure.
And did you understand how the win rate of federal prosecutors?
No,
the 98% conviction rate.
Well, I mean, 98
at this point.
Well, it's not 98% conviction rate is really based on plea agreements. That's what it is. When people think that, when you're talking about 98%, you're talking about people blowing trial. People don't usually blow trial in the feds. They usually cop out and they either cooperate or they just come in and just, take the plea agreement that's offered to them without cooperation. You get what I'm saying to you? They have a high conviction rate because people are cooperating with the federal government.
Right.
I don't know anyone except maybe 2 people And I've been around just, being in the federal system, I've been around a lot of people that had life. I probably can only name 2 or 3 that are actually still in there. The one thing that I realize about the feds is that they make so many different mistakes and they violate your rights in so many different ways. And I'm not saying this to encourage people to commit crime in the feds and go to trial. I'm not saying that. But for the most part, everyone that I did time with that blew trial are actually home today.
Wow.
Because some way or another, their rights were violated.
Right. So that is so fascinating. And what does that tell us? What does that tell us about the feds? It's like, just get this guy a life sentence, and then with whatever however much and however many rule breaking we want to do.
If he figures it out, then we'll cut him loose.
So who is culpable? Is it the judge? Is it the prosecutor? Like, who are the ones in the system making those mistakes?
Honestly,
at the sentencing and in the trial.
Well, first and foremost, I think that everyone's playing ball, in my opinion, right? From your lawyer to the U.S. attorney, as well as to the judge. We don't know what happens behind closed doors, All we know is that that we have, this situation, and that, we're standing before a court, either defending or accepting responsibility for our actions. You know what I'm saying to you? I can't really speak on anybody else's situation other than myself. But again, like I said to you, for the most part, the people that I did time with were on drug conspiracy cases. And like I said, the laws changed. And, lo and behold, they served 20 years. And then all of a sudden, you discover or realize, hey, well, this person should have never, been sentenced to this, to this amount of time because his sentence is illegal.
But my question is, why is this, who's responsible for overlooking that at the actual sentencing?
I think everybody, because like I said to you, when you come into a situation from your lawyer to the U.S. attorney to the judge, everybody has a responsibility to protect your constitutional rights. I don't care whether I'm guilty or I'm innocent. You know what I'm saying? Especially the judge, because this is what the judge takes an oath to. You take an oath to uphold the United States Constitution. You know what I'm saying to you? You're there as a referee, okay? This side is going to present an argument. This side is going to present an argument. You get what I'm saying to you? And then you have to be the deciding factor as to whether or not A is right or B is right. You know what I'm saying to you? But the most important thing is for you to be able to protect the rights of anyone walking before your court, And so I believe that everybody's responsible because my lawyer has a responsibility to protect my constitutional rights under the Sixth Amendment. That's what the Sixth Amendment says, that you have a right to effective assistance of counsel.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying to you? And so just like my situation, right? The day I got sentenced, my sentence was illegal. My lawyer should have knew that.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying to you? My lawyer should have knew that.
Exactly.
The judge should have knew that she couldn't impose the sentence that she imposed. She should have knew that. The U.S. Attorney's Office should have knew that they should have never charged me with the 3559 statute, the federal 3 strikes law, because my priors didn't qualify me for it. Everybody's supposed to know this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying to you? But yet, because like I said to you again, there's an agenda here. It always gets overlooked, and it's crazy because one of the U.S. attorneys that prosecuted me after I got sentenced had a photo of me framed in his office. And I learned that because there was another lawyer who I retained who had to go to his office to talk to him, and he seen it in there, and he also used that as one of his points when he indicted another group that came after us, which were the Latin Kings.
Wow.
And he went to him and he told me, he said, listen, do you guys know who Carlos McAdory is? Yeah, well, I did that to him. You get what I'm saying to you? And so, again, when you have people who have these agendas, we're all in trouble.
So it was like he had like a hunting trophy
Absolutely.
on his wall.
It was a trophy
with your
for
face.
Sure. It was a trophy for sure.
Okay, so it wasn't like during your sentence, a Supreme Court made a decision on a case, and then you guys it changed the circumstances of your sentencing. Your sentencing was illegal from the rip.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, right? It is everybody's fault. Ultimately, it's your lawyer. I mean, you should know how dirty the feds play.
For sure.
You should be, it's like a bureaucratic, like you just forgot.
Right.
You can't overlook this shit.
Right.
Like go to ChatGPT. Is
Right.
this a legal sentence?
Right, yeah.
It is not.
It wasn't no chat GBT back
Of
then.
course,
no.
obviously.
Yeah,
but
for sure,
like, you know, spend a couple of days and get your assistants to go thumbing through the books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's all written, so it's all. Well, let's get to it. Let's save that for the end about how you discovered. Were you aware at the time that it was an illegal sentence?
No.
I suppose not, right?
No,
If your
I
lawyer
didn't.
even know.
I didn't know that my sentence was illegal until I would say 2009. And when I say illegal, meaning that the court didn't have jurisdiction to impose life without the possibility of parole because the government never filed an 851 notice. You know what I'm saying to you? I didn't know that my priors didn't qualify. I didn't learn that until the lawyer, who's now a Court of Appeals judge, until he was the one that reached out and actually told me, hey, listen, your sentence is illegal and this is the reason why.
Wow. So they reached out to you in prison.
Right, yeah.
Amazing.
The lawyer did, yeah.
Okay, so your 4 days go by, jury finds you guilty. Is federal jury, is that you got to have a unanimous guilty
Yeah,
verdict?
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. I believe so, yeah.
And you were sentenced to what?
April 7th, 2006, I received 20 life sentences, 10 to run concurrent and 10 to run consecutive under the 3559 statute.
Okay, and they used your, now this
And
is.
they used my prior convictions that I had that said that subjected me to, because under the federal three strikes law, you have to have 2 or more serious drug offenses or crime of violence in order to be subjected to the three strikes law.
And didn't you have 2 crimes of violence? The shooting, the 2 shootings?
Yeah, I did, as well as the marijuana. They consider that marijuana charge to be a serious drug offense as well, too.
So then how were those not? How did it end up that those didn't qualify? Well,
Under the federal three strikes law, as well as the Armed Career Criminal Statute, 922G, you have to have a crime of violence prior conviction that's punishable by 10 years or more, or B, a serious drug offense that's punishable by 10 years or more. Well, I had prior convictions for the 2 assault cases, as well as the drug conviction, the small drug conviction, but neither prior was punishable by 10 years or more. They were only punishable by 7. So therefore, they were not considered to be qualifying prior convictions. So therefore, I should have never been subjected to, to be sentenced under the federal three strikes law because I never had the prior convictions that were qualifying prior convictions.
That 3 years.
Right.
That very, very close, thin line.
Yeah.
And that's what your original attorneys overlooked.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Now, to give them a little grace, that is a very specific loophole or detail that they overlooked, but it cost you your life. So I assume your family's devastated. Where do they shoot you to? Where do you go? Where do you do time?
I landed my first one was Misery Mountain. They call it Misery Mountain. They call it USP Hazleton, United States Penitentiary Hazleton. They call it Misery Mountain. That's where Whitey Bulger got killed at that prison. Yeah.
Okay. And do you go in there thinking your life's over, or what kind of time were you doing?
My mindset going in was to keep fighting. There was no way that I was going to walk in there and accept what was given to me just because nobody on my case got sentenced to over 10 years. All of my co-defendants, one of my co-defendants received 1.5 years. The second least amount of time was 6.5 years. The third least amount of time was 51 months. The fourth least amount of time was 9 years. And then the fifth least amount of time was 10 years, 7 months. And then the sixth least amount of time was 10 years, 9 months.
Right.
You know what I'm saying to you? And then I was the only one to receive ultimately 10 consecutive life sentences.
Right.
You know
Do you think you could have, even if they hadn't discovered the illegal sentencing because of your prior convictions, having been found guilty of a crime of violence, punishable by over 10 years, do you think just you could have won in a sentencing appeal based off of the discrepancy of the time, as you say?
Of course, I argued the sentencing disparity, and even like in the pre-sentence report, we were all just considered to be average participants. You know what I'm saying to you? But my sentence was nothing more than a trial penalty. You know what I'm saying to you? People don't pay attention or realize this though. But if you've ever been to a USP, right? 95% of the people that are sitting in United States penitentiaries in the federal system have 30 years or better. You don't see nobody going home for a long time. You know what I'm saying to you? And that's what the federal court is doing, or that's what they were doing then. I don't know about now, but then they're handing out. If you go to trial, they're going to punish you for that. You know what I'm saying to you? Because you have to. Because this is what I would say to you. Okay, if you and I are indicted for the exact same thing, you're no more culpable than I'm culpable, right?
Yeah.
And they give you 10 years, right? You're not a danger to society at all, right? What makes me a danger to society? You know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah. You fought them.
What makes me a danger what makes me a danger is because I decide to stand on something and believe in something and have morals and principles and not cooperate, and they punish me for it. You know what I'm saying to you? That's all it is. But if you're telling me that I'm no more culpable than you are, then why I don't get 10 years?
Right.
You get what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
Forget about prior convictions because, you had a co-defendant who had the same amount of priors. You had some that even had more priors than I had as well too. But because they cooperated,
right.
You know what I'm saying to you? Now all of a sudden they're not considered to be a danger to society, but I'm considered to be a danger because I decided to put 12 in the box and I lost.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
So therefore it's punitive.
Absolutely.
It's cruel and unusual.
Absolutely.
So,
and I argue that as well too.
Okay, so tell us, did you file appeals? I assume you filed multiple appeals.
I filed multiple appeals. Yeah. I tried everything. One of the things that I did was I always told myself I'm gonna always keep something in front of that judge's face. Always. Whether it was the district court or whether it was the Court of Appeals, because I just couldn't accept spending the rest of my life in prison because I didn't feel like I deserved it. The crime just didn't fit the time. It just didn't. And so when I walked into prison, my main goal and focus was to change everything about myself. You know what I'm saying to you? I wasn't walking in conforming to no norm of prison. You know what I'm saying to you? My mind was always outside of prison. That was the most important thing for me because I had kids that I had to get back to. I had a family that I had to get back to. And I just felt like I was I was much smarter than that to be sitting here for the rest of my life for some stupid shit.
Yeah.
And so that was always my goal. My goal was to always get out and just to continue to fight. That was what it was for me.
So you must have spent a lot of law library time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you hire like a jailhouse lawyer?
No. See, I had when I went in, I had a paid attorney, and he was the one who handled my initial appeal to appeal my sentence, and ultimately that was denied. And then we were in the process of hiring a third lawyer to actually file my 2255, my habeas corpus motion. But at that time, that's when my mother had passed away, because my mother passed away when I was in there. And so when she passed away, I remember calling my aunt Gwenda, and I'm telling her, look, I need a lawyer. And so I remember her having a conversation, and she's telling me, she said, listen, we can do it, but she's like, I listen to you call this phone every week, talking about your case. And she says, nobody knows that case better than you do. She said, and you're no dummy, get your butt in that law library, and learn. And so I remembered that. And so when she said that, that's when I stayed in there, and I happened to come across a guy who was actually a lawyer, but he was a civil attorney. And so I would just, sit next to him, and I always had my sponge out. I would always pick him for information. I learned how to research cases, case law, read case law, and things of that nature. And so, when I did that, I was able to understand everything that happened and transpired, And so in just working with him, I ended up filing my first 2255 habeas corpus motion pro se with his help. And he was the one who actually discovered that the government never filed an 851 notice, which they had to by law in order to give the court jurisdiction to impose the three strikes law against me.
That's what that 851 is?
Yeah. 851 it's a notice. Like, because you have people that are in there with drug convictions too that did time with me as well too that had life sentences based on the 851 because you have two other prior drug convictions before this third one you caught, and the court can sentence you to life without the possibility of parole based on that. But the government has to file it though. Like pretrial sentencing? Pretrial sentencing and things of that nature, they have to file because even before you even plead guilty, they have to file this. They have to file this before you even plead guilty because it has to give you an opportunity. Because if it's the government's goal and position for you to be subjected to life without the possibility of parole at sentencing, they have to file the notice. And so what they do is, in order to get people to cooperate, that's also a tactic they do as well too, is they'll file a notice with your indictment, hey, we're gonna give you life without the possibility of parole, and then when you look on there, they have to also list those prior convictions. And it gives you an opportunity to be able to challenge those, because if you challenge those and the court rules in your favor as it relates to them not being qualifying priors, then now okay, well, I'm not subjected to life without the possibility of parole. And then some people can say, okay, well, I'm gonna go to trial, or I'm still gonna take a plea agreement.
And so your U.S. attorney just forgot to file that with the judge?
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, bozos, morons.
Yeah.
That's why they work for the government.
Yeah.
If they had game, they would have a thriving private practice.
Yeah.
But these are the worst lawyers. Mm-hmm. And so that's really fascinating how so many people are out that have had life sentences.
Yeah.
Okay, so you discovered that. Mm-hmm. What did you do with that information?
Well, I filed my my first 2255 motion, my habeas corpus motion. I filed that first.
And for people that don't know, what is a habeas corpus motion?
It's a remedy that you can actually file. And that's actually the first time that they say legally is when you can challenge and argue that your lawyer was ineffective. A habeas corpus motion is, because first of all, your direct appeal is what happens first after sentencing. Your direct appeal is what happens first, and this is you being able to say, okay, well, the sentencing judge or the judge committed X amount of errors. Mm-hmm. Whether it was pre-trial motions, whether it was sentencing violations, whatever. That's what the direct appeal is for. You know what I'm saying to you? Mm-hmm. But when you come and when you come in the habeas corpus realm, now you're talking about the conviction. Now you can actually challenge the conviction of your circumstance, or your situation. And so there's a multitude of claims and issues that you can present before the court at that particular point. Though.
Okay. And is this before 2009 when you got that letter from the lawyer telling you that?
Did I discover this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in 2009. I didn't get the letter, or I actually didn't get the phone call from the lawyer until the beginning of the pandemic, 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020.
Okay. So what was the result of the habeas corpus that you filed?
The crazy thing about it, right, is that when I filed my 2255 motion, my habeas corpus motion. The government responded, right? The government responded, and when the government responded, the judge denied the motion 2 days later after the government responded. But the crazy thing about it is the way that the way that you argue when you get to that level is I file, the government files a response, and I have a legal right to file a reply before the judge can rule. So when she denied the motion 2 days after the government had filed, before I even got a chance to reply, I knew then it just even validated more how much she just did not like me. Because here it was, you jumped the gun, right? Mm-hmm. So
talking about the judge.
Yeah, so I have to file a motion to the court, to the judge, and say, hey, how can you deny my motion when I didn't even reply yet? When legally under rule, I believe it was rule 11, I have the right to reply. And so she's, oh, yeah, okay, well, yeah, you go ahead and file your reply. But now I already know you're going to deny it. Mm-hmm. So I file the reply. She tries to sit on it and wait some months. And then all of a sudden, she just comes back with her original order denying my 2255 motion. Well, like I said to you, I'm just someone who is new to this whole, legal stuff. So I didn't really understand everything that was happening because she denied all of my claims. But at the same time, there were some claims that were unanswered claims as well, too. And legally, you're supposed to address and answer every single claim. One of the claims that she didn't address, nor did the government respond to, was the fact that they never filed an 851 notice. So after that, for years, that's what I argued. Even after I got denied in 2009, I always said to the court, hey, you have to adjudicate this claim. You have to answer this claim. Right. But it was just still denial after denial after denial after denial.
And do you keep running it up to a higher court?
Yeah,
what happens after you get denied for one claim?
See, the tricky thing about the feds is that you have a right for the Court of Appeals to hear your motion, right, on direct appeal. But you don't have a right for them to hear your appeal after that. You have to get granted a certificate of appealability. And the crazy thing about it is that you have to first file a certificate of appealability to the same district court judge that just denied you, right? And then if they deny that, then that's when you can go to the Court of Appeals and say, hey, I need a certificate of appealability, which is basically just giving you permission to be able to even appeal the district court's denial of your 2255. You know what I'm saying to you? But when I tell you it's so hard, if you ask anybody who's been in the federal system and anybody that knows about the law when it comes to the federal system, it is extremely hard and difficult to get a certificate of appealability. And so when I tell you that after losing 2255, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. You get what I'm saying to you? In order for a court to hear your case.
What did you need? Is that what you needed? You needed to get back before an appellate court?
I honestly...
Because if the judge, if the prosecutor and the judge who originally gave you your sentence are against you, like what is the recourse? You have to go to you have to go to their boss, right?
You have to go, because the Supreme Court governs the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeal governs the district court. Right. That's the pecking order.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying to you? And so even a lot of times, people don't I used to one of the things that I learned over the years and just dealing with being in the law library is that a lot of times you had guys that would come in and file pro se motions and they're citing all Supreme Court cases to the district court judge when that's not the way to do it. You have to cite the Court of Appeals case law because that's who governs you. Right. You get what I'm saying to you? And so you're wondering why your motions get denied. Your motions get denied because you're citing cases that, while you might think that the district court has to follow what the Supreme Court says. No, they have to follow what the Court of Appeals says.
Right. You can't go to the highest court right away.
That's the pecking order. Right. You get what I'm saying to you?
Gotcha.
And so that's just ultimately just how it is.
So you got denied at the district level.
Yeah.
You got denied at the appellate level?
Yeah.
Wow. What year was that you lost the appellate?
I would say maybe 2011, 2012, but I didn't stop though. I still tried.
Were you losing hope at any point?
You can't. It's hard. Of course, there might have been days where you question, but you can't lose hope, unless you're somebody who just wants to accept that as being the end for you. Then that's how you lose hope. But I just couldn't accept it.
You must have seen guys going home off life sentences that gave you hope, that like gave you drive to keep going, right?
Not in the beginning. Like I said, when you're sitting, anybody that's in those USPs, man, you don't see nobody really going home. I've been in facilities where I've done 4 years, 5 years, and you don't see nobody going home. Only time you might see somebody go home is if you're seeing somebody who is on a violation, comes back on a violation or something like that. But for the most part, dudes aren't going home. So I didn't really see nobody going home. It wasn't until like the drug laws changed, the crack laws changed, you start seeing dudes, a couple dudes going home. And then when President Obama was in office, he was commuting those sentences. I was seeing dudes, that had life, getting their sentences commuted, that had been down for a while, going home. And then certain laws changing on the Court of Appeals level as well as the Supreme Court level, where dudes would start going home. But I wasn't in those USPs. That's when I was, in the lower level security facilities.
Right. Okay. So
years later,
you did get classed down to the lows.
Absolutely. I went from USP to medium to low, and when I got released from custody, I was a low custody. That's how I got released from Sandstone, Minnesota.
So you were just a model inmate. Doesn't sound like you got in any trouble.
No, I didn't have one incident report the whole time I was in there.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So it's 2019, 2020 when your life changes.
Right.
Tell us what happened.
At the time, like I said to you, there was a case that came down from the Supreme Court called United States versus Davis. And that case was shaped around 924C convictions and how if the predicate offense was not considered to be a crime of violence, the judge couldn't impose a consecutive sentence or a sentence using the 924C statute, right, which is ultimately possession of a firearm during the course of a crime of violence or in a furtherance of a drug trafficking offense. That's what the 924C is. Okay, and so this case that came down, and when the case that came down, one of the things in the federal system is that there's a database that everybody's incarcerated under, whatever statute it is, you get what I'm saying to you? And so when there's a change in the law, whether it comes from Supreme Court or Congress or the Sentencing Commission, there's a list of names of people that may be subjected to relief because of the change of the law. And so every district, in every city and every every district in the federal system or whatever, they get hit with a list of names, and for free, they have to represent you. And so what happened was, because of the United States versus Davis case, my name had hit the list of people that may be subjected to relief based on the 924C convictions that I was convicted under. Right. And so the attorney, which is, shout out to Keela E., he's a Court of Appeals judge now. He was the attorney who researched my case properly the right way. And he was the one who actually discovered that my prior convictions were not qualifying prior convictions that warranted me to ever be subjected to be sentenced under the federal 3 strikes law. Because to this day, I'm the first and only person in Minnesota history to be sentenced under the federal 3 strikes law, and it was done illegally. Right. And so he had reached out to the unit manager. Actually, he called up there, reached out to the unit manager. He didn't send me a letter. And she set up a legal call. And at the time, prior to that, before them actually locking the institution down because of the pandemic, I had filed a 2255 motion before the court, once again, telling the court, hey, look, my sentence is illegal, My lawyer was ineffective, amongst, a multitude of other issues that I presented and came and went based on case law and different things that had changed throughout the course of my incarceration. And so when she set up this legal call, I'm assuming or thinking that he was originally, when she told me that a lawyer called up there, that the judge was going to grant me an evidentiary hearing. And usually when, if you're pro se and you file a motion and the court grants an evidentiary hearing, they usually appoint a counsel to represent you during this particular hearing unless you just insist on being pro se. That's what I thought the phone call was originally for. It wasn't until I actually sat and spoke to him that he informed me that my sentence was illegal and that from the very beginning, I should have never been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole because I never had the priors that qualify for it.
Right, which again, just to reiterate, were a crime of violence with a firearm that carried a sentence of over 10 years.
Right, yeah, that I did not have priors that were qualifying priors that were prior convictions that were 10 years or more. They were only 7 years. 7 years was the max.
And those were for the shootings.
And those were for the shootings or the prior drug conviction. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this guy, he was working with the federal government. He
worked he was at the Federal Defender's Office.
Got it. Okay. Right, yeah. So whenever a case law comes down, there's a Supreme Court decision that changes all of the circumstances of the convicted inmates.
Right.
They get alerted, the federal public defenders.
Right.
Okay. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, they do.
That's like one of the more benevolent things I've heard of the system supplying.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's super interesting. I hope people hear that are listening or watching. Wow. So you must have been. You probably couldn't sleep that night.
Right. The funny thing about it is, at first, like when he called up there and he explained to me, I didn't really understand it, because you got, like I said, I had researched my case through and through, and I've seen it where it said that, but I'm saying to myself like, well, I got these prior convictions that because when you look at the statute, they list certain priors, assaults and things like that, but I didn't see that little fine print that said punishable by 10 years or more. I always looked past it. But of course, once I got off the phone with him and I looked and I researched it myself, because I had my legal work in my in my cell, and I went and I really looked at it. I'm like, oh yeah, he's right, And so now, when I discovered this, like I said to you, this is the time, again, when George Floyd was murdered, And so I called my family, and I'm like, hey, this is what the lawyer said, he can represent me, And so I'm like, man, we need to go to the media with this because I should have never received this amount of time, And I remember the next conversation I had with him, I told him, I'm like, well, my family, we're going to the media. He was like, no, because the government had already called at that time. Once he put them on notice as to what actually transpired and happened, that's when they're like, well, hold on, let's resolve this under the table. They didn't want to go, they didn't even have to go back to the DOJ, to the Justice Department to even get permission to do what they did. They were trying to find a way to try to resolve it under the table. You get what I'm saying to you?
Is that because they knew it was so illegal?
Yeah, because you have to understand, at that particular time when George Floyd is murdered, you have the whole world in the uproar.
Yeah.
Just imagine how that looks in the state of Minnesota.
Of course.
Here it is. There's this guy that you guys plastered on the news, that you had in multiple newspaper articles, and you guys gave all of this time to for a non-capital offense. Here it is. You mean to tell me this entire time it was illegal?
Right.
That the man never had the prior convictions to qualify or even warrant you to be able to sentence him to mandatory life without the possibility of parole? I never was supposed to receive a life sentence.
Right.
So
you had this time, you and the Unabomber.
Listen, the crazy thing about it is when you look at my documentary, that's one of the things, I don't know if you're familiar with the BTK killer.
Yeah.
He received 10 consecutive life sentences for killing 9 people.
Right.
I have the same amount of time that this guy has
Yeah.
for a non-capital offense.
Yeah.
Like you have to make that make sense to me.
Yeah.
You know?
So at this point, they're just trying to play ball. They want a deal
Right,
immediately.
right,
Okay,
right.
we're so sorry.
Yeah.
Let's adjudicate this and get
Right.
you home before you sue us.
Right.
Before you go to the media with it.
Right.
How did you feel? Did part of you say, because we've had guys on here who were getting ready to get paid a lot of money
Right.
for the dead time that they did, the
Right.
time that they were illegally incarcerated. It's like thousands of dollars a day.
Right.
Maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
It might be like by the hour they pay you. But what did you think? Did part of you say, no, I want my money?
Right. No, for me, it wasn't about the money. You know, for me, it was just about the blessing. And a second opportunity at life, you know, a second opportunity at fatherhood, you know, a second opportunity at, you know, being able to spend time with my family, being able to just fall in love again, you know, with a woman. Like those were the things that meant, you know, like the money that, you know, that can be made a different way. You know, I don't. For me, this is not attack. This is not no attack on the federal government or the criminal justice system per se like that. It's not an attack. I just think that one of the biggest things is that, you know, I just want people to understand that no matter what my situation was or no matter what circumstances that you go through in life, that you can overcome it. My biggest blessing is me being able to sit across from this table right now and just actually share the story and tell the story to you. That means more to me than money. You get what I'm saying to you? So I don't have no gripe. You know, it's not about me suing anybody. Like, no, I'm gonna be blessed in a different way. This right here today is a blessing to be able to be free from prison, to be able to breathe the different air that's out here. That's what I take away from it. It's not about the money.
So you really were a changed man at this
absolutely.
point. And that is in 2020, just right as COVID's breaking. So did you guys adjudicate it before COVID or did you wait?
No, see, what ended up happening was for 2 weeks, my lawyer as well as the government, they kind of went back and forth trying to figure out the best resolution. Because like my lawyer at the time, he was trying to give me immediate release. That was the goal. And if not that, even just the original plea agreement without the cooperation.
Right. Which was 15?
Which was that, which would have kicked me out the door.
Right.
And so, but they weren't willing to do that. And so what ended up happening was they were stuck at 300 months, which is 25 years. And he contacted the facility, you know, and he, you know, said to me, look, this is what they're offering. But I need an answer. You know, do you want to take it? You know, and so of course, you know, a second chance at life, I take it. You know.
So you got resentenced,
right?
And you accepted a plea deal for 25 years.
Yeah, they came. The agreement was that they would file a joint motion with my lawyer, and they would agree to a 300-month sentence. Right, dismiss counts 11 through 19, which was the 924C, the firearms, dismiss those, and then keep the same sentence intact on count 1, which is 240 months, and then impose a 5-year sentence for the felon in possession of a firearm charge that I also had as well too, which made it 25 years. And when they filed a joint motion, my lawyer jumped on board with their motion, and then the court ultimately just granted their motion because they acknowledged that that they had made an error by charging me with the 3559 statute.
Did your original sentencing judge, was she the one that was forced to do it? Now, did she do it willingly or?
Yeah, she. I mean, because like I said, you have to understand that. Think about the time that we're in. You know, we're at a time, like I said to you again, where George Floyd is murdered. It was. 5 years prior to that, if we would have had this same issue before the court, she would have had to legally grant the motion. But I still could have been subjected to 45 years because I got 20 years on count 1 for the conspiracy, but then I also have these 2 felon in possession of a firearm counts that I can receive 15 years on. You get what I'm saying to you? And so, but because of the times that we're in, it's kind of hard for you to be able to say, okay, well, you know what, I'm still going to dog. But then also, if I can rewind back, we have to talk about post-rehabilitation, and that was one of the goals, or that was one of the commitments that I made to myself when I walked into prison, was to change everything about me, because I always told myself that if given a second opportunity to be back in front of any judge, I want to give them a reason to have mercy on me, and so that's why when I walked into prison, I programmed. I ended up having over 50 or 60 certification certificates. I got certified as a personal trainer. I was a suicide companion for 4 years. I had wrote multiple books while being in there, and I had never had an incident report. These were the things that I focused on while I was in prison, as opposed to, anything else. And so I think that once the court looked at everything in a nutshell, I think that's what ultimately allowed the court to be able to say it's a no-brainer here, and give them another opportunity.
Yeah, I think judges too, even though it seems vindictive, or maybe it was vindictive, years have gone by. Yeah. So maybe their attitudes have softened, right? The pendulum has swung, Did you ever hear from the AUSA that originally put the case on you?
One of the craziest and funniest stories I can tell you is this. I had 2 prosecutors on my case, right? And one of the prosecutors that prosecuted my case was the head U.S. attorney at the time that this all transpired. She had to sign off. Mind you, this is the prosecutor who prosecuted me. Right. She had to sign off on them filing this joint motion to the court for the court to be able to vacate my sentence. And so, when I sit back and I think about things, just imagine how that comes back full circle. Yeah. This is the same prosecutor who prosecuted my case who says, okay, you know what? We want him to spend the rest of his life in prison, had to ultimately be the one to say, hey, look, file this motion and sign off on it.
She was the head of the district? She was the head of U.S. attorney of the district?
At the District of Minnesota, the Minneapolis office, yeah.
So for breaking the law, overlooking the sentencing statutes, she got a promotion.
Yeah.
These bums.
Yeah.
These bums.
It happens.
That's why I pray for a big currency crisis. So I want the whole economy collapse so we can finally cut out 80% of the whole government, all of them. They're cancer. Yeah. Anyways, just a little side note. See, I get very emotional. Yeah. You're all calm. You're the one who did the time.
Yeah, I see.
So you'd already been down in 2020 for 16 years?
16 and a half years.
16 and a half. So then off of 25, 85% of that is like 22 or something?
Yeah. I mean, when my sentence got vacated and I got resentenced, my original out date or projected release date was September 14th, 2025. And of course, like I said to you, once my sentence got vacated, I then qualified for things that had changed throughout the years in the federal system. And one of those being the First Step Act, which was an act that Donald Trump signed into office. Yeah. And with the First Step Act, because I had accumulated so many days just based on programming, I qualified for a year off my sentence. Right. So I ended up going from September 14th, 2025 to September 14th, 2024. And then, like I said, once again, I had qualified for so many different things that had changed. I qualified as well under the Second Chance Act, which was that I could receive up to a year halfway house or home confinement. And so, because, like I said, I had done so many, I had so many different programs under my belt. I ultimately was eligible for 17 months, but due to the bed space in the halfway house, because of the First Step Act and them starting to release a lot of people early because they qualified for it, I ultimately got released 13 months early for prison.
So you came home?
I came home August 13th, 2023.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I came home. I did 19 years, 2 months and 4 days.
What an odyssey, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the mind, the strength of your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you should see what happens when, like, a FedEx package doesn't get delivered on time.
Right.
I lose it. I
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably pampered. You know what I mean? We came up differently, but
Yeah.
you know, I think you've got something in you too.
Yeah.
To even from a young age, like standing on your principles of not snitching. I think you got good karma for that.
Yeah.
And just not being defeated
Right.
from looking at just death.
Yeah.
Just walk. I would see dudes when I was locked up with no release date, and I'm just like, I'm looking at a dead man, just in living form.
Yeah.
For you to deny that in your mind is, I think, really rare and but necessary. You know, you're manifesting it. Rick Ross, Freeway Rick Ross, he had a similar mindset. He was like, I'm not in here. I'm in here physically, but I'm gonna get out.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
So I really, really respect it. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And now you're out here making content, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you want to promote? I mean, the documentary, you have a documentary that you made.
Yeah, we
about
have,
this.
just, me sharing the story as well. You know, we, myself and my brother, executive produce a project called Minnesota Justice. And again, it's just about, me telling people what happened, what transpired, and just how much, even just like, I respect every protester that got out there and they marched and they protested following the death of George Floyd. I respect them because I tell people this all the time, and I even mention it, in the documentary where it's like, I don't believe that I'm here right now had they not done that, because for years, the same things that people, African Americans, and minorities are eligible for or bring forth today were ignored prior to that. And they were ignored for years. That's where the frustration and anger grew from. Because for years, we felt like they were getting away with so much. You get what I'm saying, Shu? And that we were unheard, And so, once people, we got to a point where they seen, some like actually happen live on TV that you couldn't there. How do you look away from that, And you've seen the response and the reaction from the world, not just this country, but even just other countries, and just the anger and the frustration. It's hard, like I said to you, to walk away from that, and so for the people that did go out there and march and protest, I'm grateful, extremely grateful, and I tell people this all the time too, is like, while we know that it was a tragedy, I feel like he was a sacrifice for people like myself, to be given a second opportunity, a second chance at life, as well as, other things that, we have, been able to gain and benefit from, so while it was definitely a tragedy as well, there's also been blessings that have come out of it and come from it as well too, and I'm living proof that I'm a blessing because of something like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm grateful.
Well, congratulations on your freedom, man.
Yeah, appreciate it for sure.
We're happy to have you out and
for
doing
sure.
very well.
For
So we're going to put a link to your documentary. It's a 4-part.
Yeah, it's going to be a 4-part docuseries.
Okay.
Docuseries.
It's going to be on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's going to be on the YouTube channel that we're starting and we're creating. And I also too, myself and my brother, we have a podcast that we're starting called Brother to Brother. And, we just want to join all conversations. I look at this podcast room and this podcast space. It's a dope space to be in. I think that, especially, me being someone who has done time and who has experienced a bunch of different things, and even just watching all of these other podcasts, just kind of give an opinion and have a voice when it comes to certain things. I know that I can help shape certain conversations and certain arguments, and get people to be able to understand things on a different level. I think that's extremely important for myself, is to be able to do that, So we working hard, man, And I have other interviews that I'm looking forward to lined up, So
yeah, so check him out on Instagram. By the time this comes out, I think the first parts of the documentary will be out. Yeah. So we'll link to that. And just going forward, man, we wish you nothing but the best. Check out your podcast, Brother to Brother.
Yeah.
This was really fascinating.
I appreciate it.
So thank you for coming on and blessing us, man.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
Absolutely.
All right, you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.